Hello everyone, welcome to Dnyanadeep Academy. This is our daily answer writing program for geography optional. So we take up one question and discuss how we are supposed to approach answers for geography optional. So these answers are sometimes very different than that of geography GS. So you need to understand this particular approach and tiny little nuances which go in this answer writing programs. Now we are starting our geography optional batch in the July of this year 2024. So this batch will have a comprehensive coverage of syllabus. You will get topic wise notes. There will be separate test series and answer writing program for this particular batch. Along with that, you will also have mentorship, individual mentorship, that is one-to-one mentorship, and we will have a very comprehensive approach including current affairs, answer writing, value addition, everything for geography optional. So see you in July of 2024. Keep following this space. Now let's come back to our question. So as we are going through our syllabus, very topic wise we take up this question. We are not taking random questions. So we were discussing population and settlement, and in population and settlement we have mostly done whatever topics we had for population. Now we are moving towards migration, and after that we'll go to settlement. So for migration I have one question, very basic question. This is a PYQ, I guess. I'm not able to recall for which year this particular question was asked, but this question is asking regarding forced migration. So we have to examine the causes and consequences of forced migration of population in the present context. Now, what are the keywords which need to be highlighted here? Let us understand that particular part. First and foremost, you have to examine. Okay, so that is the direction you are given. Then there is one more word you need to bother about is present day context, right? So whatever forced migration has happened in history, that is not our focal point, right? What we are supposed to focus, we are supposed to focus on what is happening in present day conditions, right? So that is supposed to be present in your answer. Then we have to give causes as well as consequences. Now when it comes to causes and consequences, this is not a very difficult part, right? Every one of you is going to have what are the causes of forced migration and what are the consequences of forced migration. But what you are more likely to miss, you are likely to miss the present day context, right? So you will have to give a lot of case studies and examples from contemporary times. Other than that, you might miss on examining things. So whenever you are examining, you will have to bring up the meaning of it, right? So whatever cause you are going to provide, you will have to explain that cause, right? You'll have to make it understandable okay, why this particular cause is there, right? And that is how you examine a particular thing. Now let us move on to the answer part. So when it comes to answer, let us first understand introduction, how we can introduce. I can introduce with definition. I can say what this forced migration is. That is a very basic approach. And there is one more way I can introduce is contemporary or current affairs event. So we already have a lot of forced migration happening in Gaza Strip as well as in Africa. So these are just token examples I have given. There are like many more areas of the world where you are experiencing forced migration. Now, when we talk about better approach, I might choose to go with the contemporary example or current affairs example, because defining forced migration is very fairly a basic thing. Anyway, we are going to do that. But once we have an answer which is being expected from present context, it is better to introduce this contemporary or current affairs event right at the beginning. After that, I will move on to defining what forced migration is. I will not leave this particular part, right? So I will first say whatever is happening in Gaza or in Africa, it is one of the example which illustrate the condition of forced migration in contemporary world. After that, I will say what this forced migration is, and while I say what forced migration is, I have to highlight one more point, that forced migration is nothing but a kind of push migration, right? So there are certain circumstances which have developed which are resulting into push effect and causing push migration. So these are the keywords. That is how your optional answer is going to get separated from GS answer, right? So without this keyword, your answer is going to be incomplete. Now let us move on to causes of forced migration. Now everyone of you know what are the causes of forced migration, but when it comes to writing these causes, what you are supposed to do, rather what I prefer, whenever I write answer, I make multiple subparts of it, right? There will be one candidate who will write all of these causes one after another, but what I am preferring here, I will talk about anthropogenic or human causes. Okay, both words can be written here, because there, when it comes to forced migration, there are certain natural conditions which are arising and causing forced migration, right? But then there are human activities or human angle also which is resulting into forced migration. Let us talk about conflicts which are there all across the globe. They are causing forced migration, but then there is an issue of, let us say, flood or drought, that is also causing forced migration, right? So that is why I am separating human causes as well as natural causes. Fine. Further, I have a list of forced migration causes. War and conflict is there, racial discrimination, religious persecution, economic hardships, pollution and environmental degradation. This can be a few causes you can attribute. Now, with each and every single cause, you will have to elaborate what this is, like elaborate in 10 words and provide an example for each of these. Now, when it comes to example, it needs to be a contemporary example. It will be better if you are able to provide an event or a case which has had happened in last 10 years. Fine. So that is how you are supposed to approach. So I have war and conflict which is continually there. Racial discrimination, I can talk about Rohingyas. Similarly, I can talk about Rohingyas in religious persecution, economic hardships. Many parts of the world are facing economic hardship. You can talk about some parts of Africa. You can talk about Central America. You can talk about some states of Southern America where there is a lot of economic hardships and people are moving towards Europe or North America. Other than that, pollution and environmental degradation. So many affluent people, even in India, they are migrating because they are not able to live up with the present pollution conditions in country, right? So that is one example, but even better examples are there. There are many examples in Africa. Collect all these examples. Once you create a set of examples, it becomes very handy to give these examples in contemporary context. So I will elaborate each of these and then I will provide example for each of these, right? Further, I have natural causes, disaster, epidemic, climate change. For each one of these, you have a lot of examples. Now, we also have to provide consequences. So I am going for consequences as well. But when it comes to consequences, again, I am making certain sections. So when I am talking about consequences, I will be talking about economic consequences, I will be talking about political consequences, and then I will also be talking about socio-cultural consequences, right? Again, in each of these, give examples. Fine. So when it comes to economic consequences, whosoever is receiving these particular migrant flows, that particular region is going to experience economic strain because sources are strained. Just look at the conditions in some of the European states, because a lot of people are coming from Africa and that is overburdening the systems in these European states. Similarly, there are political consequences because there will be some political conflict around this particular part. Socio-cultural consequences are there because there are people coming from other regions which are going to have a conflict with native population. So these are the consequences I am supposed to talk about here. Now, key highlight of this question is about providing enough examples and enough case studies, right? If your answer has no example, no case studies, then there will not be enough marks awarded for your answer, right? So, reason is each and every single person can give causes and consequences. The beauty lies in providing examples and case studies. Now, moving forward to conclusion. Conclusion needs to be a kind of way forward. You can provide how this forced migration can be stopped. Rather, you can talk on a very global scale, on a larger scale. You can talk about, let us say, global peace, right? So, as you have global peace, a lot of causes can be stopped, right? Causes such as war, causes such as conflict, causes such as discrimination based on race or religion, right? So I'll talk about global peace. At the same time, I'll talk about how to address climate change and how to have a disaster preparedness. So that is something I'm going forward to in conclusion. Talk about global peace, talk about climate, and talk about disaster preparedness. So these are the angles which need to be addressed while concluding for this particular question. Now come to diagrams and maps. Can we draw a diagram or a map? Maybe a diagram is not as relevant in this particular part, or I have some block diagram which can be presented in this particular part, but better than that I have a map to be drawn. Okay, so I'm just having one diagram. I have collected this diagram from a document of World Bank, and this diagram is showing how climate and conflict results into migration. So these type of diagrams are always appreciated, right? So if you are writing answer, somewhere in the middle introduce this diagram. I'll just show you this diagram, take a screenshot of it and add this particular diagram into your notes. Whenever you are writing on forced migration or climate related migration or conflict related migration, you can add this particular diagram. It will add value to your answer. Other than that, I will have to draw a map. Okay, so I will have a map which will show flows of forced migration. Okay, so you can show a flow from Africa to that of Europe. You can show some flows of migration maybe from Southeast Asian countries towards western part of the world, from Central America or South America to North America. So these kind of flows, again, they will add a value to your answer. And most importantly, whenever it comes to drawing diagrams and drawing maps, they need to be drawn somewhere in the middle or in the first page of your answer, so that your answer initially looks like a geography optional answer. These are some of the tips and tricks you need to follow whenever you are writing optional answer. So that was about this particular question. We'll see you in next part. Thank you everyone.